She stood at the pharmacy counter, heartbroken, returning her daughter's life-saving medicine because she couldn't afford it. A man in a tailored suit watched silently from the back of the line. She had no idea he was the city's most dangerous mafia boss. And what he did next changed everything. The fluorescent lights of Morrison's pharmacy buzzed like angry wasps. Mia Carter stood at the counter, her hands shaking as she pushed the small white bag back toward the pharmacist. "I need to return this." The pharmacist, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and tired shoulders, looked up from her computer screen. "Ma'am, this is a prescription. We can't accept returns on." "Please," Mia's voice cracked. She hated how desperate she sounded, but desperation was all she had left. I can't afford it right now." The woman's expression softened as she glanced at the prescription label. "This is for a child. Asthma medication." "My daughter," Mia blinked hard, fighting the tears that threatened to spill. "Not here. Not in front of strangers. She's 7. But I'll figure something out. Maybe next week when I get paid again, I can." This prescription was already filled. "Store policy says." "I know what your policy says." The words came out sharper than Mia intended. She pressed her palm against her forehead, steadying herself. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. It's just, my paycheck was supposed to last 2 weeks. But today these men came to my building. They said my ex-boyfriend owed money to someone, and since he skipped town, they took what I had. All of it. $347. The pharmacy fell silent. Even the other customers waiting in line looked away, embarrassed by her raw honesty. "They took everything from my purse right there in the hallway," Mia continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "Lily has enough medicine for maybe 3 more days. I'll find a way. I always do. But right now, I need that $63 back just to buy groceries." The pharmacist opened her mouth to respond, but a deep voice cut through the air. "Process the return." Mia turned. A man stood 3 people back in line, partially hidden behind a display of reading glasses. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Mia's rent. His dark hair was swept back, and his face was all sharp angles, strong jaw, prominent cheekbones, eyes like polished obsidian. He looked like he'd stepped out of a magazine spread for expensive watches. "Sir, I wasn't talking to you," the pharmacist said. The man stepped forward, and something about the way he moved made everyone instinctively give him space. He pulled out a sleek black wallet and placed 2 crisp $100 bills on the counter. "Keep the medicine. Keep your $63, he looked at Mia directly for the first time. "And use this for whatever else you need." Mia's throat went dry. I can't accept that." "You already did," he nodded to the counter, where the pharmacist had already snatched up the bills with practiced efficiency, clearly unwilling to argue with this particular customer. "But I don't even know you," Mia protested. The corner of his mouth lifted, not quite a smile, but close. "Consider it an investment in good karma." Before Mia could respond, he turned and walked out of the pharmacy, a man who looked like muscle and menace holding the door open for him. Through the glass, she watched them climb into a black Mercedes with tinted windows. The pharmacist cleared her throat. "Well, that was something." She slid the medicine and some cash back across the counter. "Honey, you've got $63 here, plus he gave $200. I'm giving you back $137 as change." Mia stood frozen, staring at the money. "Ma'am? You okay?" "Who was that?" The pharmacist's expression shifted, something between fear and respect. "You're new to this neighborhood, aren't you?" "I moved here 6 months ago." "Why?" "That was Lorenzo Romano." The woman's voice dropped to barely audible. "And if he just paid for your daughter's medicine, you either got very lucky or very unlucky. Time will tell which." In the Mercedes, Lorenzo Romano stared out the tinted window as his driver, Marcus, navigated through Chicago's South Side traffic. "Boss, you want me to look into the woman?" Marcus asked, his eyes flicking to the rearview mirror. "Yes. What exactly am I looking for?" Lorenzo was quiet for a moment, watching the pharmacy disappear behind them. He'd gone in for a simple errand, picking up medication for his grandmother who lived in the neighborhood, the woman who raised him before his world turned dark and profitable. He should have sent someone. He never ran personal errands anymore. But he had. And he'd heard everything. Find out who took her money, Lorenzo said finally. She mentioned debt collectors. Men who came to her building. Marcus tensed, his hands tightening on the steering wheel. You think? I think if they're operating in my territory, I want names. And I want to know who they're collecting for. Right away, boss. 20 minutes later, Lorenzo sat in his office, a renovated industrial loft with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Chicago River. His phone buzzed. Talk to me, Marcus. You're not going to like this, Marcus's voice sounded tight. The debt collectors? They work for us. Tony Barone's crew. They've been running collections in that district for the past 3 months. Lorenzo's jaw clenched. Define collections. Mostly legitimate stuff. People who borrowed from our lending operation and didn't pay. But Marcus hesitated. Seems like Tony's boys have been getting creative. If someone skips town, they're hitting up girlfriends, roommates, family members. Anyone connected. That's not how we operate.
No, sir.
It's not. Lorenzo ended the call and stood, walking to the window. Below, the city stretched out like a chessboard, and he'd spent 15 years learning how to play the game. His empire was built on rules. Clear rules. You borrowed money, you paid it back. You broke a deal, you faced consequences. But you didn't punish innocent people. You didn't take grocery money from single mothers. You definitely didn't make children suffer for their parents' mistakes. That was chaos. And chaos was bad for business. He pulled out his phone and made another call. Get Tony and his collection crew. I want them at the warehouse tonight. 9 o'clock. No exceptions. All of them? The voice on the other end asked. Lorenzo's reflection stared back at him from the dark window, his expression cold and carved from stone. Every single one. Mia Carter sat cross-legged on her apartment floor that evening, counting the money 3 times to make sure it was real. $137. Plus the medicines safely stored in their tiny refrigerator. Mommy, can we have chicken nuggets? Lily called from the couch, her small voice raspy from the day's exertion. She clutched her worn stuffed rabbit, the one with the missing eye that Mia kept meaning to sew back on. Yes, baby. Chicken nuggets and mac and cheese. The good kind. Lily's face lit up, and for a moment, the weight on Mia's chest lifted. She could breathe again, at least for tonight. But as she heated dinner on their ancient stove, her mind kept returning to the man in the pharmacy. Lorenzo Romano. The pharmacist's warning echoed in her head. You either got very lucky, or very unlucky. Mia had learned to trust her instincts. They'd gotten her through an abusive relationship, 2 years of barely scraping by, and countless nights wondering if she was strong enough to keep going. Right now, those instincts were screaming that accepting money from a man like that came with strings attached. She just didn't know what kind yet. Across town, Lorenzo Romano sat in his office reviewing files that Marcus had compiled within 2 hours. Efficient. That's why Marcus had lasted 7 years as his right-hand man. Mia Carter, age 28, Marcus said, standing on the other side of the desk. Moved to Chicago from Springfield 6 months ago. Works 2 jobs. Morning shift at Rosie's Diner on 5th, night shift doing data entry for a medical billing company, remote. Single mother. No criminal record. Not even a parking ticket. And the ex-boyfriend. Devin Mitchell. Small-time con artist with a gambling problem. Borrowed $8,000 from Tony Barone's operation 4 months ago. Promised he'd pay it back with interest after some big score. Surprise, the score never happened. He disappeared 3 weeks ago. Last known location was somewhere in Nevada. Lorenzo leaned back in his chair. So Tony's crew decided to collect from the girlfriend. Ex-girlfriend. Marcus corrected. According to the landlord I talked to, Mitchell hasn't been around since February. Ms. Carter made it clear to everyone in the building she wanted nothing to do with him. But Tony's boys didn't care about that. No, sir. Lorenzo was quiet for a long moment, his fingers drumming against the leather armrest. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the Chicago skyline in shades of amber and blood orange. How many others? He asked finally. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. How many other what? How many other people has Tony's crew shaken down who had no legal obligation to pay? The silence that followed was answer enough. Find out, Lorenzo said, his voice dropping to a dangerous quiet. I want names. Amounts. Everything. Boss, Tony's been with the organization for 15 years. His father worked for your uncle before. I don't care if his great-grandfather sailed over on the Mayflower with my ancestors, Lorenzo stood, buttoning his suit jacket. We have rules, Marcus. Those rules are the only things separating us from the animals. When my men start terrorizing single mothers and taking food money from children, we're not businessmen anymore. We're thugs. And thugs don't build empires. They build bonfires and burn everything down. Marcus nodded slowly. There's something else you should know. Tell me. Word's already spreading about what you did at the pharmacy. Tony knows. His crew knows. Marcus chose his words carefully. They're calling it soft. Saying you're losing your edge. Lorenzo's expression didn't change, but something cold flickered in his eyes. They think compassion is weakness. In our world, boss, it often is. No, Lorenzo walked to the window, his reflection sharp against the darkening glass. Fear is easy. Any idiot with a gun can make people afraid. But respect? Control? That takes precision. It takes knowing when to show mercy and when to show teeth. He turned back to Marcus. A man who can't control his own organization looks weak. A man who lets his soldiers run wild, stealing from women and children in his territory, looks worse than weak. He looks incompetent. So, tonight's meeting. Tonight's meeting is about reminding everyone what happens when you forget who's in charge. Lorenzo checked his watch. 8:45. Time to go. At 9 o'clock sharp, Lorenzo Romano walked into the warehouse on the city's industrial edge. The space was vast and cold, metal beams crisscrossing overhead like bones of some ancient beast. 6 men stood in the center, their shadows long under the harsh fluorescent lights. Tony Barone stepped forward, a thick-necked man in his 40s with graying hair and hands that looked like they'd broken plenty of noses. Boss, we came like you asked. But I gotta say, calling us all out here without explaining why is a little. Lorenzo held up a hand, cutting him off. From his jacket pocket, he pulled out a small white pharmacy bag and placed it on the metal table in front of them. Anyone want to tell me what this is? The men exchanged confused glances. Lorenzo opened the bag slowly, deliberately, and removed the prescription bottle. Albuterol sulfate. Inhaler for a 7-year-old girl with asthma. Cost, $63. He set the bottle down with a soft click that somehow echoed through the warehouse. This morning, the girl's mother tried to return this medicine because she couldn't afford it. Want to know why? Tony's jaw tightened. Boss, if this is about that woman on Archer Avenue. Her name is Mia Carter. And yes, Tony, this is about her. Lorenzo's voice remained calm, almost conversational, which somehow made it more terrifying. Tell me, does $8,000 owed by a man who skipped town 3 weeks ago entitle you to steal $347 from his ex-girlfriend? Tony Barone's face flushed red. With all due respect, boss, that's how collections work. Guy owes money, disappears, we collect from whoever's connected. It's standard practice. Standard practice. Lorenzo repeated the word slowly, as if tasting something bitter. He walked around the table, his footsteps echoing. Tell me, Tony, when you were breaking her ribs, did you bother to verify she was still with Devin Mitchell? We didn't break anyone's. You took every dollar she had. Lorenzo's voice remained level, but something in his tone made the temperature in the warehouse drop. She works 2 jobs. 2. Morning shift at a diner, night shift doing data entry after her daughter goes to sleep. She moved to Chicago 6 months ago to get away from Mitchell. But your boys showed up at her building and decided her ex-boyfriend's debt was her problem. One of the younger collectors, a kid named Jimmy with a spider tattoo crawling up his neck, spoke up. Boss, we didn't know all that. We just knew she used to be with him. Tony said. I'm not interested in what Tony said. Lorenzo stopped walking and faced them. I'm interested in what you did. So let me be very clear about what happened today. You took $347 from a woman who had nothing to do with Mitchell's debt. That money was supposed to feed her and her daughter for 2 weeks. Instead, she had to choose between groceries and asthma medicine. Look, it's unfortunate, Tony said, his voice carrying an edge of defiance. But this is the business we're in. We can't run background checks on every. Lorenzo slammed his hand on the table. The sound cracked through the warehouse like a gunshot. Every man flinched. This is not the business we're in. Lorenzo's calm facade finally cracked, revealing the cold fury beneath. We loan money to people who need it. They sign contracts. They agree to terms. When they don't pay, we collect from them. Not their ex-girlfriends. Not their cousins. Not their former roommates. But if they skip town, then we find them. Or we write it off. What we don't do is terrorize innocent people. Lorenzo pulled a folder from inside his jacket and threw it on the table. Papers spilled out, names, addresses, amounts. Marcus did some research. Want to know what he found? The men stared at the documents. In the last 3 months, Tony's collection crew has taken money from 17 people who had no legal obligation to pay. Lorenzo picked up one of the papers. Sarah Martinez. Her brother borrowed $2,000, then moved to California. Your boys took her rent money. She got evicted. He picked up another. Marcus Webb. His cousin borrowed $5,000. Your boys took his disability check. His disability check. Lorenzo's voice was razor-sharp now. And this morning, you took grocery money from a single mother with a sick child. We were just trying to recoup losses, Tony said, but his voice had lost its earlier confidence. The organization was out money. We were making it right. Making it right? Lorenzo's laugh was hollow. You were stealing. There's a difference between collections and theft, Tony. And what you've been doing is theft. Jimmy shifted nervously. Boss, we were just following orders. Tony said this was how we maximize recovery on bad debts. Lorenzo turned his attention to the young man. Tell me, Jimmy. When you took that money from Mia Carter's purse this morning, did she fight back? Jimmy looked at his feet. No, sir. Did she threaten you? Call the police? No, sir. What did she do? A long pause. She cried. Asked us to please leave her something. Said her daughter needed medicine. And what did you do? Jimmy's voice was barely a whisper. Took it all anyway. Lorenzo let the silence hang in the air like a noose. Then he spoke, each word precisely articulated. Let me explain something to all of you. This organization exists because people respect us. Not fear us, respect us. We provide services the banks won't. We protect businesses in our territory. We maintain order. But respect is a fragile thing. You know what destroys it faster than anything? No one answered. Looking weak, Lorenzo continued. And you know what makes me look weak? When my own men run around stealing from women and children like common street thugs. When word spreads that Lorenzo Romano's crew shakes down single mothers for money they don't even know. Boss, nobody knows it was us, Tony tried. I know. Lorenzo's eyes were black ice. I know that somewhere in this city, there's a 7-year-old girl who couldn't breathe properly because my men took her medicine money. I know that when I walked into that pharmacy today, I saw a woman broken by people who work for me. That makes it my problem. My responsibility. My failure. He walked back to the table and picked up the medicine bottle, holding it up so every man could see it. This costs $63. Devin Mitchell owed $8,000. So you terrorized an innocent woman and her child over $8,000. Lorenzo's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. Do you have any idea how much money I make in a day? In an hour? And you're out here stealing medicine money from children to recoup $8,000. The weight of his words settled over the warehouse. "Here's what's going to happen," Lorenzo said. "You're going to find every single person you've stolen from. Everyone who didn't actually owe us money. And you're going to pay them back. Double." Tony's eyes widened. "Boss, that's $34,000, give or take." Consider it a tax on stupidity. Lorenzo placed the medicine bottle back in the bag with deliberate care. "Because when you steal from innocent people in my name, you don't just steal from them. You steal from me. You steal my reputation, my control, my authority." He looked each man in the eye. "You steal from me when you steal from a child." The next morning, Mia was washing dishes when she heard the engines. 3 of them. Deep, rumbling sounds that didn't belong in her neighborhood, where most people drove dented Hondas and rusty pickup trucks. She dried her hands on a towel and moved to the window, her heart already beginning to race. 3 black SUVs were parked in front of her building. Tinted windows. Chrome gleaming in the morning sun. Men in dark suits climbing out. Oh God, the towel slipped from her fingers. Lily looked up from her coloring book at the kitchen table. "Mommy, what's wrong?" "Nothing, baby." Mia's voice shook despite her attempt to sound calm. "Just stay right there, okay? Don't move." She watched as the men entered her building. Heard their footsteps on the stairs. Heavy, purposeful. Coming closer. Her apartment was on the 3rd floor, and she knew those footsteps were climbing toward her. This was it. This was the price of accepting help from Lorenzo Romano. She'd been stupid to think a man like that did anything out of kindness. He bought her. Or maybe he decided that the best way to send a message to Devin was through her. Either way, she was about to pay for money she'd never asked to borrow. The footsteps stopped outside her door. A knock. 3 firm raps. Mia grabbed Lily and pulled her close, positioning herself between her daughter and the door. "Who is it?" "Ms. Carter. We're here on behalf of Mr. Romano. We need you to come with us." Her blood ran cold. I can't. My daughter. Both of you. Please. Mr. Romano is waiting." "I don't want any trouble," Mia's voice cracked. "Whatever he thinks I owe him, I'll pay it back. The money from yesterday, I still have most of it. He can have it all back. Just please leave us alone." A pause. Then a different voice, softer. "Ma'am, you're not in trouble. Mr. Romano wants to speak with you. That's all." "I don't believe you." "Ms. Carter," the first voice again. "You can come willingly, or we can wait out here until you're ready. But either way, Mr. Romano has requested your presence. 5 minutes. That's all he's asking." Lily started to cry, her small body trembling. "Mommy, I'm scared." Mia held her tighter, her mind racing through impossible options. She could call 911, but what would she tell them? Men were politely asking her to talk to someone? They hadn't threatened her, hadn't forced their way in. And if Lorenzo Romano was really as powerful as the pharmacist had implied, getting the police involved might make things worse. She had no good choices. Only bad ones and worse ones. "Okay," she called out finally. "Okay, just give me a minute." She dressed Lily quickly, her hands shaking so badly she could barely button her daughter's jacket. She grabbed the money Lorenzo had given her yesterday and shoved it in her purse. Maybe if she gave it back immediately, he'd let them go. When she opened the door, 2 men in suits stood in the hallway. They didn't look threatening, just professional, like corporate security. But Mia had learned that danger often wore respectable faces. "This way, please." They escorted her down the stairs, one in front and one behind. Lily clung to her hand, her rabbit clutched under her other arm. Outside, neighbors watched from windows and doorsteps. Mrs. Chun from Tubi had her phone out, probably already texting everyone in the building. One of the men opened the SUV door. The interior was leather and luxury, so different from Mia's world that it felt like stepping into another dimension. "Please, ma'am." Mia climbed in, pulling Lily onto her lap. The door closed with an expensive thunk, and the vehicle pulled away from the curb. They drove for 15 minutes in silence. Lily had stopped crying, but remained pressed against Mia's chest, her small heart beating like a frightened bird. Mia stared out the window, trying to memorize the route in case she needed to find her way back. But the streets blurred together, industrial districts giving way to warehouse zones, then to a neighborhood she didn't recognize. Finally, they stopped in front of a renovated brick building overlooking the river. The men escorted her inside, through a lobby that looked like it belonged in a five-star hotel, and into an elevator with mirrors on all sides. Mia caught her reflection, pale, exhausted, terrified. Lily's rabbit had a smudge of chocolate on its ear from breakfast. They looked like exactly what they were, poor and out of place. The elevator opened onto a single floor, a massive loft with exposed brick walls, modern furniture, and floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of Chicago. And standing by those windows, hands in his pockets, was Lorenzo Romano. He turned as they entered. "Thank you, Marcus. You can wait outside." The men left, and suddenly it was just the three of them in that enormous space. Lorenzo approached slowly, his movements measured and unthreatening. "Ms. Carter, I apologize for frightening you. That wasn't my intention." "Then what was?" Mia's voice came out steadier than she expected. "What do you want from us?" Instead of answering, Lorenzo reached into his jacket. Mia instinctively pulled Lily closer, but he only removed an envelope. He held it out to her. "Your money. $347. The exact amount that was taken from you." Mia stared at the envelope like it might explode. "I don't understand. The men who took your money yesterday work for me. They acted without authorization and violated the principles this organization is built on." His voice was calm, matter of fact, like he was discussing a business transaction. "You were wronged. I'm making it right." Slowly, Mia took the envelope. Inside were crisp bills, her grocery money, her gas money, everything she'd lost. Her hands started shaking again, but this time from something other than fear. "Why?" The word came out as barely a whisper. "Why are you doing this?" Lorenzo's dark eyes met hers, and for a moment, she saw something beneath the polished exterior, something that might have been regret or anger or both. "Because you were wronged in my name." Mia clutched the envelope, her mind struggling to process what was happening. "I can take my daughter and go home now." "Not yet." Lorenzo walked to a side table and poured himself a glass of water from a crystal pitcher. "There's something else I need you to see. Mr. Romano, I appreciate you returning my money, but..." "It's not a request." He turned back to her, and despite his calm tone, there was steel underneath. "The men who took your money need to understand the consequences of their actions. And you need to see that justice was done. Otherwise, this will feel incomplete. For both of us." Mia wanted to argue, to take Lily and run out of this place and never look back. But something in Lorenzo's expression told her that refusing wasn't really an option. 20 minutes later, they pulled up to a restaurant in Little Italy, Giordano's, a family-style place with checkered tablecloths and the smell of garlic bread wafting from the kitchen. But the front door was locked, and a closed for private event sign hung in the window. Marcus opened the door. "Everyone's inside, boss." Lorenzo nodded and turned to Mia. "Stay close. Don't say anything. Just watch." The restaurant's interior was dim, chairs stacked on tables except for a cleared space in the center. About 20 men stood along the walls, some in suits, others in casual clothes, but all with the same watchful, predatory stillness. They parted as Lorenzo entered, their eyes tracking him with a mixture of respect and fear. In the center of the room stood Tony Barone and his collection crew, the 6 men from the warehouse. Jimmy with the spider tattoo looked like he might be sick. Lorenzo stopped a few feet from them. Mia hung back near the entrance, holding Lily's hand so tightly her fingers ached. Her daughter pressed against her leg, sensing the tension in the room. "Gentlemen," Lorenzo addressed the men along the walls. "Thank you for coming. I called this meeting because there's been a misunderstanding about how this organization operates. Some of our colleagues forgot the rules. So today, we're going to have a refresher course." He turned to Tony. "Tell everyone what you did." Tony's jaw clenched. Boss, we already went through this at the...
Tell them.
The silence was suffocating. Finally, Tony spoke, his voice tight. My crew collected money from people who didn't legally owe it. Family members. Ex-girlfriends.
We
took it upon ourselves to expand the definition of liability. You stole from innocent people, Lorenzo corrected. Say it properly. Tony's face flushed red. We stole from innocent people. And why did you do that? To recoup losses on bad debts. Lorenzo turned to address the room. Tony and his crew collected from 17 people who had no obligation to pay us. Mothers, brothers, people who had nothing to do with the original debts. And this woman here, he gestured to Mia, and every eye in the room shifted to her. She felt exposed, vulnerable, like an exhibit in a museum. They took her grocery money because her ex-boyfriend skipped town owing us $8,000. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Ms. Carter works 2 jobs, Lorenzo continued. She left her ex to protect her daughter. She moved to this city for a fresh start, and my men showed up and stole everything she had. She tried to return her daughter's medicine because of us. The murmurs grew louder. Mia saw some of the men shaking their heads, their expressions darkening as they looked at Tony's crew. Lorenzo pulled an envelope from his jacket. The total amount stolen from all 17 victims was roughly $17,000. Tony, your crew is going to pay back double. $34,000. Starting now. Boss, we don't have that kind of cash on hand, Tony protested. Then you'll liquidate assets, Lorenzo's voice cut through the room like a blade. Marcus has prepared paperwork. You're going to sign over your share of the sports betting operation, Tony. That should cover about $20,000. Your crew will split the remaining $14,000 from their personal accounts. Tony's face went white. That's my retirement. I've been building that for. Should have thought of that before you turned my organization into a street gang. Lorenzo stepped closer, and despite being slightly shorter than Tony, he somehow seemed to tower over him. You stole my name. You made me look weak. You made this family look like thugs who terrorize single mothers. So yes, you're going to pay. And you're going to pay enough that you never forget this lesson. Jimmy's hands were shaking as Marcus approached with a briefcase full of documents. Boss, please. I got a kid at home. I can't afford. You have a kid? Lorenzo's voice dropped dangerously low. You have a child, and you still thought it was acceptable to steal medicine money from someone else's daughter? Jimmy looked at his feet, his face crumbling. Sign the papers, Lorenzo ordered. All of you, one by one, they signed. Tony's hand trembled so badly he could barely hold the pen. Jimmy actually dropped it twice. The sound of pens scratching paper filled the restaurant, and Mia watched these dangerous men reduced to frightened boys. When it was done, Marcus collected the documents and handed them to Lorenzo, who turned to Mia. Miss Carter, come here, please. She didn't want to move, but her legs carried her forward anyway. Lily clung to her hand like a lifeline. Lorenzo handed her a much thicker envelope. $694. Double what was taken from you. Plus, he gestured to Marcus, who produced a check. $5,000. For the trauma my organization caused you and your daughter. Mia stared at the check, her hands trembling. This is too much. It's not enough, Lorenzo's voice softened slightly. But it's what I can give to make this right. He turned back to Tony and his crew. You're all demoted. You'll work under Marcus's direct supervision for the next year. If you step out of line once, just once, you're done. Not just with collections. With everything. Understood? The men nodded, their faces ashen. Good. Now, get out of my sight. They filed out quickly, their shoulders slumped in defeat. The other men in the room watched them go, the message clear. This is what happens when you forget the rules. Lorenzo addressed the remaining men. Let this be a reminder. We're not thugs. We're businessmen. We have standards. We have honor. And anyone who forgets that will answer to me. 3 days after the restaurant, Mia noticed the car. It was parked across from the diner where she worked the morning shift, a dark sedan with 2 men inside. They sat there for her entire 6-hour shift, drinking coffee from thermoses and occasionally speaking into phones. When she left at 2 o'clock, the car followed her home. "Can I help you?" she called out when she reached her building. One man lowered his window. He had kind eyes and a salt and pepper beard. "Just making sure you get home safe, Miss Carter." "I didn't ask for bodyguards." "Mr. Romano's orders, ma'am." She wanted to scream. Instead, she went inside and called the number Marcus had given her in case of emergency. Lorenzo answered on the second ring. "Ms. Carter, is everything all right? Why are there men following me?" A pause. "For your protection." "Protection from what? I thought you said everything was handled." It was. But word travels fast in my world. His voice was measured, careful. When a man in my position shows public favoritism to someone, it creates opportunities for enemies. Mia's stomach dropped. What kind of opportunities? The kind where people see you as a weakness they can exploit. So until things settle down, you'll have security. It's not negotiable. You can't just decide to control my life because I can and I am. You became my responsibility the moment I stepped into that pharmacy. Now please, let my men do their job. He hung up before she could argue. Across town, in a dimly lit pool hall on the west side, Vincent Calabrese leaned against the bar and listened to his lieutenant, Ray, recount the story for the third time. Romano made them sign over assets. In public. In front of 20 guys. All because some broke woman couldn't afford medicine. Ray shook his head. Word is spreading everywhere. People are saying he's gone soft. Vincent sipped his whiskey, considering he'd been chipping away at Romano's territory for 2 years, ever since Lorenzo took over from his uncle. The Romano family had controlled the South Side for decades, but Vincent was patient. He waited for openings, for moments of weakness. This felt like one. "What do we know about the woman?" Vincent asked. "Mia Carter. Single mom. Works 2 jobs. Lives in a dump on Archer Avenue." Ray pulled out his phone and showed Vincent a photo, a pretty woman with tired eyes, holding a little girl's hand outside the diner. "Romano's got 2 guys on her at all times now. Rotating shifts. He's protecting her." "That's what I'm saying, boss. He's got real feelings for her. This isn't just business." Vincent smiled slowly. In their world, feelings were liabilities. Attachments were weaknesses to be exploited. How long has he had men on her? 3 days. And where's the daughter during the day? Elementary school. Jefferson, about 6 blocks from their apartment. Vincent set down his glass. Interesting. Ray leaned forward. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking Lorenzo Romano just painted a target on that woman's back. And if we wanted to send him a message, show everyone he's not as untouchable as he thinks." Vincent let the sentence hang. "We could grab the kid," Ray finished. "Use her as leverage. Or just make an approach. Scare the woman. Show her that Romano's protection isn't as comprehensive as he thinks. Either way, when word gets out that we got close to someone under his watch, his reputation takes another hit." Ray grinned. "I like it. When do we move?"
Soon.
But carefully. Romano's not stupid. We need to wait for the right moment. When his guys get comfortable. When they stop being so vigilant, Vincent signaled the bartender for another drink. Everyone gets sloppy eventually. By the end of the week, Mia felt like she was suffocating. The men followed her to work, waited outside Lily's school, sat in cars outside her apartment building all night. The other residents started treating her differently, some with fear, others with hostility. Mrs. Chin stopped smiling at her in the hallway. The superintendent asked if she was involved with dangerous people. "I'm not involved with anyone," Mia snapped. "I'm just trying to live my life." But that wasn't entirely true anymore, was it? Lorenzo Romano had pulled her into his world, and now she couldn't escape. On Friday evening, she marched up to the car parked outside her building and knocked on the window. The driver rolled it down, a different man than before, younger, with a crooked nose that looked like it had been broken several times. "I want to talk to Lorenzo." "Ma'am, Mr. Romano is." "I don't care what he's doing.
Tell him I want to talk. Now.
The man hesitated, then picked up his phone. 20 minutes later, the black Mercedes pulled up. Lorenzo climbed out, looking like he'd come straight from a business meeting in his sharp navy suit. "Ms. Carter, what's wrong?" "What's wrong?" Mia's voice rose. "Your men are following me everywhere. My neighbors think I'm a criminal. My boss asked if I was in some kind of trouble. I can't live like this." "You're alive to complain about it," Lorenzo said calmly. "That's what matters. I didn't ask for this." "No, you didn't. But you accepted my help. And now you're part of my world whether you like it or not." He stepped closer, his voice lowering. "I have enemies, Ms. Carter. Real ones. People who would hurt you and Lily just to get to me. So, yes, you have bodyguards. Yes, your life is different now. But you're safe. Your daughter is safe. That's the trade." "I never agreed to any trade. You took my money." His eyes were hard now, all business. "The moment you accepted that envelope, you entered into an agreement. I protect you. You deal with the consequences." Mia felt tears of frustration burning. "This isn't fair." "No," Lorenzo agreed quietly. "It's not, but it's reality. And reality doesn't care about fair." He turned to leave, then paused. "For what it's worth, I am sorry. I never meant to make your life harder. But I won't apologize for keeping you alive." He drove away, leaving Mia standing on the sidewalk feeling more trapped than ever. 2 weeks passed in a strange, new normal. Mia went to work. The men followed. Lily went to school. Different men waited outside. At night, Mia would lie awake listening to the sounds of the city and wondering how long this would last. She started to relax. Maybe Lorenzo had been overreacting. Maybe his enemies weren't really interested in some random single mother from the South Side. That's when they came. It was a Tuesday afternoon, unseasonably warm for late March. Mia had taken Lily to Morrison's pharmacy to refill her prescription, the same pharmacy where this whole mess started. The men who usually followed them had parked across the street, visible through the store's windows. "Can I get a candy bar, Mommy?" Lily asked, tugging on her sleeve. "Not today, baby. We need to get home for dinner." They left through the front entrance, Mia carrying the small pharmacy bag. The sidewalk was crowded with after-work foot traffic, people rushing to catch buses and trains. She didn't notice anything wrong until they turned down Monroe Street, taking their usual shortcut through the alley that led to their apartment building. The alley was empty. Too empty. Mia's instinct screamed at her a half-second too late. She spun around, pulling Lily close, but 3 men had already blocked the entrance behind them. They wore dark hoodies and medical masks, the kind people still wore sometimes since the pandemic, making them look anonymous, forgettable. "Stay calm," one of them said. His voice was muffled behind the mask. "We just want to talk." "Talk about what?" Mia's voice came out steadier than she felt. She positioned Lily behind her, pressing her daughter against the brick wall. "About your friend Lorenzo Romano." The man stepped closer. "See, he's been very interested in your well-being. We're curious why." "I don't know what you're talking about." "Sure you don't." Another man moved to the right, cutting off that exit. "Look, we don't want to hurt you. We just need you to come with us for a little while. Send Romano a message." Lily whimpered behind her, and Mia felt her daughter's small fingers clutching her jacket. Adrenaline flooded her system. She looked around desperately. A dumpster, fire escape, nothing she could use. Where were Lorenzo's men? They'd been right across the street. "My bodyguards are." "Your bodyguard are having coffee at the shop 2 blocks away," the first man interrupted. "We've been watching their patterns. They get sloppy around this time. Always take a coffee break when you're inside the pharmacy." Mia's blood ran cold. They'd planned this, studied her routine, waited for the perfect moment. The third man produced a phone. "We're going to walk out of this alley nice and calm. You're going to carry your daughter. Anyone asks, we're family. Understand? And if I scream..." The man's eyes above the mask were dead calm. "Then we'll have to make sure you can't. And that would be unfortunate for everyone, especially your kid." Mia's mind raced. She could fight, But 3 against 1 with Lily to protect? She could run, but where? They had both exits covered. She could. I wouldn't move if I were you. The new voice came from above. Mia looked up to see men emerging from the fire escapes on both sides of the alley. 5, 6, 7. She lost count as they kept appearing. No guns. No weapons. Just men in suits and casual clothes, climbing down with the casual confidence of people who knew they'd already won. More footsteps echoed from both ends of the alley. Within seconds, 20 men had materialized, blocking every exit, surrounding the 3 masked attackers. They didn't rush or threaten. They just stood there, a silent wall of overwhelming force. Marcus stepped forward from the group, his expression carved from stone. Gentlemen, you made a mistake. The 3 attackers looked around, realizing they were completely boxed in. No escape. No advantage. This is Romano's territory, Marcus continued, his voice quiet but carrying through the alley. Did you really think we wouldn't be watching? That we'd leave her vulnerable? The bodyguards were decoys. The Real security has been with her the whole time. In cars, on rooftops, in the stores around her. You've been photographed at least 15 times in the last 10 minutes. Marcus held up a phone showing clear images of the 3 men. We know your faces now. We'll know your names by tonight. One of the attackers reached inside his hoodie. Instantly, the circle of men tightened, closing in like a fist. They still didn't draw weapons, they didn't need to. The message was clear. Try anything, and you'll disappear. Walk away, Marcus said. Tell whoever sent you that Mia Carter is untouchable. Next time you come near her or her daughter, you won't walk away at all. The 3 men exchanged glances, then slowly backed toward the alley entrance. The wall of men parted just enough to let them through, then closed again. Mia watched them run, vanishing into the street traffic. Her legs suddenly felt weak. She sank against the wall, still clutching Lily. Marcus approached carefully, keeping his distance. Miss Carter, are you hurt? She shook her head, unable to speak. We were here the entire time. They never had a chance to take you. He gestured to the men around them, who were already dispersing. Mr. Romano doesn't take chances with people under his protection. Mia looked at him, really looked at him, seeing the careful coordination, the planning, the sheer force that Lorenzo had deployed to keep her safe. All these men, watching her every move. She'd thought Lorenzo was being paranoid. He wasn't. The danger was real. The enemies were real. And if Lorenzo's men hadn't been there, she didn't want to finish that thought. Take us home, she whispered. Please. Marcus nodded and guided them to a waiting car. As they drove away, Mia held Lily tight and silently admitted what she'd been refusing to accept. Lorenzo had been right all along. Marcus drove them back to the apartment in silence. Lily had fallen asleep against Mia's shoulder, exhausted from fear and adrenaline. Mia stared out the window, her mind replaying those terrifying moments in the alley over and over. They could have taken her. Taken Lily. And she'd been so angry at Lorenzo for the constant surveillance, so resentful of the intrusion into her life. She'd thought he was being controlling, possessive, paranoid. But he'd been keeping them alive. When they pulled up to her building, Mia wasn't surprised to see the black Mercedes already parked outside. Lorenzo stood by the entrance, his suit jacket unbuttoned, his normally composed expression tight with something that looked like fury mixed with relief. He opened the car door himself. Are you hurt? Mia shook her head, carefully lifting Lily. She's just sleeping. Let me. Lorenzo reached for her daughter, and Mia's first instinct was to pull away. But she was tired, so tired, and Lily was getting heavier every day. She let him take her. He carried Lily like she weighed nothing, one arm supporting her while she drooled slightly on his expensive suit. He didn't seem to care. Marcus held the building door, and they climbed the 3 flights to Mia's apartment. Inside, Lorenzo laid Lily gently on the couch, adjusting a pillow under her head. He stood there for a moment, looking down at the sleeping child, his jaw working like he was chewing on words he couldn't quite say. Mr. Romano, I should have had more men. His voice was low, controlled, but Mia could hear the anger underneath. I knew Vincent Calabrese was watching. I knew he'd make a move. But I thought I had more time. Your men were there. They stopped it. They almost didn't. He turned to face her, and his eyes were darker than she'd ever seen them. If Marcus had been 30 seconds slower. If they'd taken you before my team moved in. If, he stopped, his hands curling into fists. This is my fault. No, it's Vincent's fault. Whoever that is. He's a rival. A man who wants what I have and will use anyone to get it. Lorenzo moved to her small kitchen window, looking out at the street below. He saw you as an opening. A weakness. And in my world, weakness gets you killed. Mia sank into a chair, suddenly exhausted. So what happens now? More bodyguards? Bigger guns? Do we go into hiding? No, Lorenzo turned back to her. Now we end this properly. He walked over to where Lily still slept and did something that surprised Mia. He knelt down beside the couch, lowering himself to her daughter's level. He reached out and gently brushed a strand of hair from Lily's face. She's 7 years old, he said quietly. She should be worried about homework and cartoons. Not whether she can breathe. Not whether her mother can afford medicine. He looked up at Mia. I'm going to make you a promise, Miss Carter. Your daughter will never go without medicine again. Not for a day. Not for an hour. Mr. Omano, you've already done. I'm not finished, he stood, pulling out his phone and showing her a screen. I've set up an account with Northwestern Memorial Hospital. Fully funded. 20 years of treatment, medication, specialists, anything Lily needs. The money is already transferred. It's done. Mia's hand flew to her mouth. That has to be hundreds of thousands of dollars. 250,000, actually. More if she needs it. He pocketed the phone. I also looked into your situation. Your ex-boyfriend, Devin Mitchell? He left you with more than just emotional scars. There are debts in your name that he opened. Credit cards, payday loans. I've had my lawyers handle it. Everything's cleared. You're starting fresh. Tears burned in Mia's eyes.
Why?
Why are you doing all of this? Lorenzo was quiet for a long moment, his gaze moving between her and Lily. Because when I walked into that pharmacy 2 weeks ago, I saw something I hadn't seen in a long time. A good person struggling against a system that doesn't care. My system. My organization. He stepped closer to her. I built my empire on rules and respect. But somewhere along the way, some of my people forgot what that meant. They became the thing I spent years fighting against. You're not responsible for. I am. When people act in my name, I'm responsible for everything they do. His voice softened. You and Lily became my responsibility the moment I stepped in. And I don't take my responsibilities lightly. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a card, heavy stock, embossed lettering. Just a phone number, nothing else. This is my direct line. Not Marcus. Not anyone else.
Me.
You need anything, day or night, you call. Food, medicine, protection, money. Anything. He placed the card in her hand. And if anyone threatens you or your daughter again, you call me immediately. Mia looked at the card, then at him. This feels like more than just making things right. It is. Lorenzo's expression was unreadable, but his eyes held something fierce and protective. Vincent Calabrese wanted to use you to hurt me. He thought you were a weakness. He was wrong. You're not a weakness. He glanced back at Lily, then met Mia's eyes with an intensity that made her breath catch. You're under my protection now. Full protection. That means no one in this city, in this state, anywhere, will dare touch you or your daughter. Not Vincent. Not anyone. His voice dropped lower, each word precise, and weighted with absolute certainty. From this day forward, no one touches what's mine. The possessiveness in his words should have frightened her. Should have made her push back, assert her independence. But Mia thought about those men in the alley. About Lily's medicine. About years of struggling alone while the world ground her down. Sometimes protection came with strings attached. Sometimes those strings were the only things keeping you from falling. Okay, she whispered. Lorenzo nodded once, then headed for the door. He paused at the threshold, looking back. Get some rest, Miss Carter. Tomorrow, your life gets easier. I promise you that. Then he was gone, leaving Mia alone with her sleeping daughter and a future that suddenly looked very different from the one she'd imagined.